Hello and welcome to another video. It's very nearly Christmas, and by the time this video goes out I think it's going to be around Christmas Eve, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to look at costume in Christmas films. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of what classifies a Christmas film. I'm going to go with films that are set at Christmas and are about Christmas, so Christmas stories. No Die Hard here, sorry. I'm not getting into that debate. This is just about very festive Christmas films. So what I thought we'd do is look at some, what I think are quite nice examples of costume in really festive Christmassy films. And I thought we'd find a good example from each and have a look at them and see what makes them good costumes. I picked 4 films that I think have really good examples of costumes in. And I'm going to start with the lowest ranking of the 4 of them, leading up to what I think is probably the most excellent example of costume in a Christmassy film. So the first film we're looking at is probably not the first film you would come to mind, but I think there's some really excellent examples of costume in it, even though the film's not amazing. It's Netflix Christmas Chronicles 2. And the reason I've gone for the second film is because of the pairing of Santa and Mrs. Claus. What I really like about these costumes is the one that they've done for Kurt Russell is not red velvet with the very bright white shiny fur trim. It's quite a textured deep red leather, which he did wear in the first film, but again, like I said, the reason I've chosen the second film is because of the pairing with Mrs. Claus. And with the leather, they've coupled it with a really interesting, textured, multi-tonal fur trim. So it's not a bright, brilliant white trim, it's quite a sandy brown, more natural, realistic looking fur trim, which I think makes the costume slightly different to most of the Santa costumes you see out there. And I know they're trying to go for a more, not necessarily younger, but more cool, hip Santa. But I think the way they've done the costume is really interesting. Like I said, the coupling of the leather and the more muted, natural fur trim, I think works really well. And it's slightly more refreshing to see than the carbon copy of the Coca-Cola Christmas advert Santa. And like I said, the coupling I think is really interesting because with Kurt Russell's Santa, you have Goldie Hawn, his real life wife, as Mrs. Claus. And what they've done with her costume is the fur trim sort of travels up through the front of the costume, right around the hood of the coat, and it looks really cozy. It looks like something you would realistically want to wear. And the gold trims, I think, add just a little bit of depth and magic to the costume, which is what you expect in costume that would be for Mrs. Claus or Santa Claus, and it adds that little bit of contrast to the unembroidered jacket that Kurt Russell wears. So the film is probably not the most amazing film out there, it's a bit of fun, but I think, like I said, the costumes, the way that they've approached dressing Santa or Father Christmas and Mrs. Claus is just slightly different, which I think is a really novel way of approaching really well-known stereotypical characters. We all expect to see Santa in a red coat and a white trim, but the way that they rendered these costumes, the really nice textured leather with the fur trims and the feeling that these characters actually live in these coats, I think should be commended. The next film I want to point out is The Grinch, the one with Jim Carrey. And obviously, when you think of The Grinch and you think the word costume, you probably go straight towards the Grinch himself, the way that they put all those prosthetics on Jim Carrey and made him a very different silhouette and character. But what I think is interesting about this film is the way that they did Martha May Whovier. I think there's probably nothing more iconic than when she's on the roof of the house using the Canon light machine, pasting all of the lights across the front of her house. But the costume that always stands out to me when we think of Martha and we think of the Grinch is the beautiful blue satin silk dressing gown that she wears at the end of the film. The one that she wears when they all dance around the Christmas tree and they celebrate the fact that the Grinch is actually good and he brings back all the presents and they have Christmas all together. And I think what makes this costume an excellent costume is the way that they made it. The fall of the fabric is excellent. The skirt of the dressing gown is a circular skirt, so it falls along the bias in a really beautiful, full way. Then you have the feather fur trim all the way around the hem and up through the front, and it frames her face really, really well. And then you have those extraordinary long sleeves that just add a little bit of really nice detailing and it makes her look like a 1930s Hollywood movie star. And I think that costume is probably the standout one for me. Obviously you have the incredible rendering of Jim Carrey as the Grinch, the way that they put all those prosthetics onto him. And I saw something recently, the fact that Jim Carrey was so claustrophobic in all of that prosthetics that he nearly quit the film, which I probably wouldn't have blamed him, but I'm glad that he pushed through and they produced that iconic festive Christmas film. The next film on my list is White Christmas. Bing Crosby singing White Christmas and all the other different songs that they sing in that film. It's a very cozy, extremely festive film that really sums up this time of year. Growing up watching this film, I was always really envious of the idea of a white Christmas because where I grew up in Plymouth, you didn't really get snow. We were far too close to the sea. I'm lucky now that I live in Montreal and there's snow everywhere and I'm really enjoying it, but that's a sidetrack. Let's go back to the film. There are many excellent costumes in this film. The variety of circular skirts and the way that they all, especially the check ones, they all line up and they create beautiful chevrons. The fabrics in this film are extraordinary and it's just, for a costume maker and anybody interested in costume, it's a really beautiful film to look at. The end scene is probably one of the most iconic in this film, and it's the one that they use on the DVD covers and all the posters. And when you Google White Christmas, the first thing you see is the end scene with all of them in their red satin and velvet costumes with the white fur trims. Going back to what we were saying about Christmas Chronicles, that idea of the red velvet and the white fur trim is iconic around this time of year, and there's a very good reason why those costumes are the first ones you think of when you think of this film. But there are so many other costumes in this film that really stand out. One of them is Rosemary Clooney's black sequin evening gown when she's performing at the nightclub, when she thinks that Bing Crosby is not the knight in white shining armor that he thought he was. So she leaves the barn and she goes to sing in the nightclub and she wears the most exquisite evening gown. And for obvious reasons, that's an excellent costume. But one of the costumes, or not particularly a costume, it's more of a prop costume, that I think is excellent is when she comes back to the barn and they're performing the final show for the Colonel to celebrate his life. And it's just right before that final scene when they were in their red velvet and satins and fur trims. They perform a number called I Wish I Was Back in the Army, and they are in sort of military uniforms, American Army uniforms, and they're singing about the fact that they're now civilians and they want to go back in the army. But at the very end of it, up pops these, I suppose, puppets really. They're not quite cardboard cutouts, they're not flat, they're very three-dimensional costumes out of the stage, and follows them as they're dancing. And the way it's done is excellent. It's funny, it's performed really well, and the fact that they are three-dimensional costumes and they rise up and they've got hats and they're a bit like those seaside scenes where you pop your head through and you've got a seagull nicking a fish and chips, that sort of thing. But they follow them as they're dancing. It's really, really, really interesting. So if you've forgotten that scene or you've not watched White Christmas, I would recommend looking at that scene particularly because it's really funny and it's really well done. And the last film is my favourite Christmas film, and it's so many people's favourite Christmas film, and I think it's probably the best example of costume in a Christmas film that you could get, and it is Muppets Christmas Carol. Now, I know you're thinking, it's the Muppets, they're puppets, why are we talking about costume when we're talking about puppets? But seriously, you should see the costumes in this film. The costumes in this film have been pointed out by other people on YouTube as being excellent examples, and I completely agree, especially Gonzo with his multiple waistcoats, which is a very historically accurate way of dressing a Victorian gentleman. Having multiple different layers of waistcoats, that was a historical thing that happened when men were dressing. The plush velvet that they used for the hats really mimic silk plush and make the top hats look excellent. Miss Piggy's costume, particularly when she's cooking and she has a lace trim around her bonnet and her pinny, the check of her blouse where the check itself has been chevroned and pattern matched. These are puppets, and you don't necessarily think of the level of detail that would go into making puppets costumes, but the way that these costumes have been made is exceptional. Please, if you're not convinced, go and look at these costumes. They are excellent. This goes right through to the humans with Michael Caine. If you look at his costume closely, you might remember him being in a big black cloak, but the detailing of the tailoring underneath his cloak, the weight of the wool cloak that he's wearing, his black top hat, everything is perfect. When you look at his dressing gown, it's a beautifully made damask dressing gown. Every single detail in this film is perfection. Every time I watch it, which has to happen on Christmas Eve every year, the film itself makes me smile because it's the Muppets and they're amazing, but the costumes just makes my Christmas Eve. They are excellent. So please, please go and watch it if you're not convinced. If you are convinced, join me in celebrating the fact that these costumes are incredible, and go and watch it anyway because they're the Muppets and you need to watch them. And with that, I hope you enjoyed looking at some examples of costume. The festive period is about celebrating whatever you want to celebrate, being with family and friends, being with the people that you choose to be with, and just having a lovely, cozy time together. And films like these really help you get in the mood for the Christmas period or the festive period, and it's something that you can watch with your children, things that you can watch with your family, your friends, your loved ones, your husband, your wife, your partner. And costume, remember, is always there when you're watching these films. These are just 4 of the examples that I thought would be interesting to look at, but every Christmas film has a costume designer. So when you're watching your next Christmas film, think about the costumes that you're seeing. Even if you haven't been thinking about them because you're just enjoying the film, that's probably a good thing because it means that the costume designer's done their job and you're immersed in the world that they're creating. but also just think about what they're trying to achieve. Look at the fabrics, look at the way that they've used colours in different ways to symbolise what a character wants and needs. It's good fun. Before I go, to celebrate this festive period, I am going to be putting up a little competition on my Patreon page. I don't know if you've seen, but I recently made the novelty Christmas angel for our Christmas tree, and I thought I might make some form of tree topper for whoever wins the competition, and they get to choose whatever they want, and I will make it for them for their tree for next year. So if you would like to enter that competition, go onto my Patreon, sign up and put in your name into the post that I'm going to put up, and maybe you'll win some form of tree topper, and it's your choice, whatever you want to have. So again, thank you for watching, and have an excellent festive period. However, whatever you're celebrating, I hope that the next year brings you lots of exciting opportunities, and I will see you in the new year.